With over a decade and over 27 feature films, multiple television series across 3 platforms, and countless tie-ins and cross-promotions, it's fair to say the Marvel Cinematic Universe has grown pretty complex. Isn't it nice of them to break it down into easy-to-understand phases? From its humble beginnings assembling the Avengers during Phase 1, to its current cross-platform Phase 4 expanding into the multiverse, there's a lot to keep track of. Where does one phase truly end and another begin? When did the phases actually start? The whole phase system is the brainchild of Marvel Studios' one true king, Kevin Feige, after all, and he clearly knows what he's doing. I'm Chris Goodmakers with ScreenRant, and today I'll be breaking down the phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In around 15 minutes, wow, I should probably get started. Spoilers for the whole of the MCU. Marvel's Phase 1 began in 2008 with the cinematic release of Iron Man. It was a massive global success and kicked off the biggest continuing franchise in film history. The Ernest series has finally been dethroned. Sorry, but kids love superheroes now. Not low-intellect blue-collar janitors who do impressions. I'll never understand this generation. The whole phase idea wasn't actually used at first because Phase 1 was the least planned. Iron Man was just a movie, released under Paramount distribution. Yes, Disney didn't have its hands in the endless cookie jar just yet. For a brief and wonderful moment in time, Captain Kirk and Tony Stark were under the same banner. I weep for the shared universe we never had. The famous end credit scene wasn't even supposed to go anywhere. Director Jon Favreau included Samuel L. Jackson as his comic counterpart, mostly as a lark. The director of Zathura, a space adventure, was more interested in the meta Easter egg potential. This Easter egg was furthered when Stark himself showed up in The Incredible Hulk. Phase 1 continued after that with Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America, the First Avenger. Or as I call it, Captain America, the first one to use a subtitle. Phase 1 at its core is simple and clean. It's about meeting the main Avengers and then seeing them meet and work together for the first time. It was an incredibly ambitious idea. Each hero gets their own film to introduce their whole deal. Hawkeye and Black Widow have to share because there's not enough to go around, but Iron Man gets 2 because he's Papa Marvel's special little boy. Finally, Phase 1 concludes bombastically with the release of 2012's mega hit, The Avengers. A clean title for a clean phase. Done, right? Wrong. During this period, Marvel was conducting regular DVD releases of their hit films. Remember DVD releases? Well, back then, studios actually tried to encourage you to own physical copies of their films. It's clearly better just to continuously charge a subscription for a service that can remove any movie at any time for no reason. Part of that incentive was the Marvel one-shots. These shorts told fun little stories tangentially related to the main films. During this time, 3 shorts were attached to physical releases. The first is titled The Consultant, and expands on the ending of The Incredible Hulk. It was attached to Thor's home release. Originally a part of the DVD for Captain America, the second short, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, features Phil Coulson stopping a gas station robbery while driving to be in the first Thor movie. Finally, attached to the Avengers DVD was the short Item 47, the story of a couple who finds a discarded Chitauri weapon and then uses it to rob banks. It was the last piece of fictional media attached to the first wave of MCU films. This makes it the true end of the inaugural run of stories. Phase 2 is now upon audiences everywhere, and while it may seem just as simple as Phase 1, things start to get a little complex. You see, Marvel has officially started flirting with something that will only lead to tears. My tears. Later in this video. Phase 2 was officially the start of cross-platform interconnectivity. The second wave of the MCU begins appropriately with Iron Man 3. The first round began with Tony Stark, so it's fitting that the next one does. The third and final entry in the Iron Man specific films dealt with the fallout of the Avengers in many ways. Not only was Tony suffering from post-alien invasion PTSD, the film itself cooled critics' feelings towards an extended Marvel universe. You're all wrong though, the Mandarin twist rules. So the next thing in Phase 2 is Thor: The Dark World, right?
It's complicated.
Wrong again, because between the release of Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 was the premiere of the first MCU television series, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 2 possessives in one title? Bold move, Feige. The first season of the ABC series took place concurrently with the release of the Phase 2 films, often crossing over with the major events of the movies. Despite the series later being shuffled out of continuity, at the time it was very much billed as a part of the MCU. Phase 2 continued with the aforementioned Thor, Turn Off the Dark, and then Captain America, Winter Soldier. The second wave was about expanding the world of the MCU. The films began to fully introduce secondary Avengers like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Don't forget about those Marvel one-shots either. The physical releases for Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 gave us Agent Carter and All Hail the King. Agent Carter served as a sort of pilot for the eventual show. Marvel's Agent Carter, the series, also premiered at the start of 2015, putting it smack in Phase 2 as well. All Hail the King followed up with the few living Iron Man villains. It also existed to assure fans that the actual Mandarin existed and wasn't just a shirtless Guy Pearce. These are the final one-shots as of this moment, as DVD extras were becoming a thing of the past. The best was yet to come for Phase 2, however, because the Guardians of the Galaxy were on their way to cinemas everywhere. Guardians introduced us to the titular heroes, as well as gave us our first proper look at overarching villain, Thanos. Sure, we saw his creepy smile at the end of the Avengers, but now he has lines and was played by Jonah Hex himself. After James Gunn gave us one of Marvel's best films yet, Joss Whedon gave us one of its most disappointing. Avengers: Age of Ultron introduced us all to critical characters like Vision, Scarlet Witch, and Tony Stark's fascistic paranoia. While it was underwhelming, it did bring an appropriate end to the second phase. Except it didn't. While the first phase ends on an Avengers film, the second ends on a little tale about a man and his ants. Ants! Ant-Man is the end of the second phase of the MCU. Feige himself described the movie as more of an epilogue to Phase 2, but that still makes it a part of it, Kevin. Regardless of how it's classified, Ant-Man rounds out our completed list of Phase 2 Why are you looking at me like that?
You forgot about Netflix.
Netflix? Okay, so during this period, while also running the network shows like Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Marvel's Agent Carter, Netflix entered into a deal to produce and host exclusive series. I'm going to keep this quick, but Daredevil premiered in April 2015 between Ultron and Ant-Man. If we take Ant-Man as the definitive cutoff date, then only the first season counts for Phase 2. Even Matt Murdock can see that. The rest of the Netflix shows, however, are a part of Phase 3. While the third wave appears to begin with Captain America: Civil War, this is false. Phase 3 began with the premiere of Jessica Jones on Netflix in November of 2015. I'm going to forgo exact release orders for individual titles in the interest of time. From now on, call me Ricky Bobby, because I only care if you're first or last. So Phase 3 begins, perhaps the most important phase of the MCU. A lot of things culminated during this wave. Firstly, Tony and Steve's long-running rivalry comes to a head with Captain America: Civil War. The third entry in the Captain America series also gave fans something that had been sorely missing from the MCU: Spider-Man. Yes, the wall crawler was finally amongst his peers, and better yet, his recasting means that I don't have to retroactively include the Amazing Spider-Man films in the previous phases. Yay me! Phase 3 continued with the introduction of many new heroes. Doctor Strange was next, introducing reality bending and magic to the MCU. Then the lovable misfits returned in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The Wallcrawler finally got his own film with Spider-Man: Homecoming. His own MCU film. He's already had 5 before this. The God of Thunder's world came to an end in more ways than one with Thor: Ragnarok. And finally, Black Panther: Kitty Cat roared its way to the top of the box office. With 6 feature films released before another Avengers film, this wave already contained the same amount of movies as the last 2. During this time, we can also head back to the land of TV and streaming, because while Agent Carter ended criminally early with 2 seasons, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the various Netflix series were going strong. Luke Cage and Iron Fist joined the roster, and they all got their own much more disappointing team-up with the Defenders. Finally, there were also 3 online shorts released around this time, officially introducing Thor's roommate. Still waiting on that Disney Plus series, Marvel. Then came the bombshell entry in the franchise, Avengers: Infinity War. Everyone you love is dead! Not really, though. You would think this would be the end of Phase 3. It's already 1 film longer than any phase before it, and this is a pretty big moment in the Avengers' lives. But if the last phase was good enough to end on an Ant-Man film, this one is too. Ant-Man and the Wasp gave us a nice epilogue and was a fun and exciting adventure. Man, that Paul Rudd, he's so ding-dang charming. You know what? I'm actually really vibing on this phase right now. Been the best one so far. Yeah, let's keep this train rolling. Come on, what's next? Oh. Yeah, okay, I guess I asked for it. Captain Marvel sure was a Marvel movie, and now we have some context on who Nick Fury was paging. You know what? We can't leave it like that. Let's go out on a real high note and kick Thanos' ass. Endgame was truly the end of many things. The end of the big purple walking chin that had been menacing the MCU since the beginning. The end of the original Avengers lineup. Most importantly, it was also the end of Tony Stark, who, after creating the MCU so long ago, gave his life saving his friends and excuse me. Audiences were sad at the loss of Tony Stark. Even the retirement of Steve Rogers left them understandably melancholy. What they needed was a fun, bright romp that simultaneously addressed the grief left over from Endgame. Well, that plus the grief of the cancellation of the Netflix Marvel shows. Remember them? Help us out, Spider-Man! You're our only hope! Spider-Man Far From Home gave us all a sense of closure on the 3rd phase of the MCU. This wave was the largest and most ambitious yet, with some of the highest highs and lowest lows. Here we are, the ongoing Phase 4. While the first new piece of MCU content was the premiere of WandaVision as the first Disney Plus exclusive series, the first event was an end. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had managed to make its way across 2 full phases, despite how much its canon had been disowned in that time. Congrats, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You lasted longer than better Marvel shows just by keeping your head down on basic cable. Okay, so Phase 4 is huge, so let's get going. WandaVision was the first to Disney Plus. It started great, but ended with the same old tricks. Falcon and Winter Soldier crowned a new Sentinel of Liberty, and gave the world dancing Zemo. Loki broke the timeline, and my will to see anything other than reptile versions of the whole MCU. Black Widow finally came to cinemas and gave us a film about the underrepresented Avenger. Too bad she was already dead. The Eternals underwhelmed, and Hawkeye rescued Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk from Netflix cancellation. 'Tis a dark realm. Few return. The MCU also began to fully embrace the multiverse with What If? The animated series told stories of alternate universes, and as of the new Doctor Strange, looks to be very important to continuity. Then came Spider-Man: No Way Home. Looking to fix the damage to his public image, Peter Parker enlists Doctor Strange to help and ends up cracking open the multiverse. Out comes the cast of the Sam Raimi and Mark Webb Spider-Man films. Wow, now the Spider-Man movies we all grew up with were an official part of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Awesome! Wait, does that actually mean the old movies are included in Phase 1? But they came out before. Marvel's Phase 1 began in 2002 with the cinematic release of Spider-Man. It was a massive global success and kicked off the biggest continuing franchise in film history. It was followed by 2 sequels and then a reboot with its own sequel. In the meantime, Iron Man came out. Also, the 2 Venom films are in Phase 3 and 4 respectively now. Welcome to the team, Tom Hardy. Okay, back to Phase 4. So what's next with this current wave of Marvel films and TV shows? Moon Knight has just been released, but isn't out yet as of this recording. The series promises a darker and more psychological take on the MCU, and Oscar Isaac looks to stun with his performance as Mark Spector. Then after that, we have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
We should tell him the truth.
Is that Professor X? Marvel's Phase 1 began in 2000 with the cinematic release of X-Men. It was a massive global success and kicked off the biggest continuing franchise in film history. It was followed by just so many sequels and spin-offs, and then Iron Man came out. Then after that, there were more X-Men movies that came out. They fit into various phases I'm too tired to figure out. Then the whole series was canceled and ended on a terrible movie that took way too long to be released. Okay, let's shuffle this back to Phase 4. Yes, Multiverse of Madness looks to further split open the coffers of Marvel's back catalog. Perhaps when we see it in theaters, other old Marvel heroes will appear. Maybe this even means that all Marvel films exist in the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Wait. Marvel's Phase 1 began in 1986 with the cinematic release of Howard the Duck. It was a massive failure, ruined many careers, and forced George Lucas to sell Pixar. It was the first Marvel film and kicked off decades of terrible adaptations. Then X-Men came out. Wait, I was born in 1986. Marvel Phase 1 began in 1986 with my birth. I am the beginning of the MCU. I am the worlds of Marvel made manifest with glorious purpose and divine.
Okay, you're okay. Take a drink. Nice slow drink. All right.
That got a little away from me there. Let's finish with Marvel Phase 4, shall we? So, what's left for the phase that is seemingly never-ending? Well, film-wise, we have Thor: Love and Thunder, which will give us both a new Thor, and we'll see the return of Ragnarok director Taika Waititi. Then you have Guardians 3, Ant-Man 3, Fantastic Four, and the all-ladies team-up film, The Marvels. Don't cancel that Disney Plus subscription, because you can also look forward to series and specials like She-Hulk, Secret Invasion, a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special? Okay, sure. Welcome to Phase 4, which is now just the rest of Marvel and all Marvel that's ever been. It's hard to know what comes next with Phase 5 because there's still so much left of the current wave. Whatever it is, I'm sure we can expect it to be a lot. If Marvel wants my advice, which they definitely do not, I would tell them to scale back. The recent explosions of films, shows, miniseries, and specials is a lot to keep track of. Its complexity even ripples back to the past, further complicating its multiverse. So please, Marvel, can we just go back to 5 simple films about characters we like, followed by a big sugary dessert of a team-up? If only for the sake of my sanity. Oh god, I forgot Shang-Chi!